A copy of the following narrative was given to the Vermilion Area Archival Society, now the Vermilion Historical Society, in July of 2007. The essay appeared in the Sesquicentennial Vermilion, Ohio book, published in 1987. This audio narrative of that essay is taken from the original handwritten manuscript and has not been edited, except in places where I thought further explanations might be necessary. I've added photographs throughout the piece that closely correspond, or as close as I can get, correspond to the narrative as it unfolds. It's my sincere hope that persons interested in the history of my town, our town, Vermilion, Ohio, will be pleased with both efforts.
Now we will come back north over the railroad tracks on the west side of Grand Street, where Vermilion Hardware is now. S.W. Simons had a grocery store. It was some different from today's grocery stores. A boy came around in the morning and took your order. Then in the afternoon, our order was delivered. Some service, first by horse and cart, and later by Model T Ford. The old horse barn is still in the rear as a warehouse by the Vermilion Hardware. We now come on north and cross Liberty Street to where the police ambulance garage is now. When I was a boy, Guy Davis had a dry goods store on that corner in what was a large frame building. Later, Line and Hunt had a Ford Auto agency there, and after that, Glenn Martin had a Pontiac agency, which he occupied when the building burned down. The mayor's office was upstairs and many valuable records were destroyed. From that corner going on west, we had a livery stable where you could rent horses and buggies, owned then by Charles Decker. Later it became an auto agency, was rebuilt by Guy Walker, and is now Dick Baker's garage. Next to that, going on west, was Fred Becker's blacksmith shop, where horses had shoes made, etc. I spent many an hour there. Now let us go back uptown on the north side of Liberty, going east on the corner where Wolf Electric is now. Charles Englebry had an undertaking establishment and living quarters. Next was George Blattner's Hardware, later torn down and presently a brick building occupied by Ohio Edison. The next building was the post office, which later moved into the east end of the Fisher Block. That building was then used by the old Lake Erie Power and Light Company and later by Tony's Shoe Store. Next we have the building where the Prague is now. And as I mentioned, Okagi had his first restaurant, and also our early telephone company had the exchange upstairs. Next was a large house which stood where the parking lot of the Prague restaurant is now. Dr. Buell had his office on the west side and living quarters in the east side. Both the house and the White Inn restaurant next door were later torn down. Then came the store that is now the Harbor Town store. My early memory of this store was a barbershop and pool room. The proprietor was known as Steve the Barber. I believe it was called City Barbershop. Next was Jake Abel's Barbershop, later known as the Captain's Chair. I got my hair cut there as a boy and still do. In the next building, Jay Buster had a newsstand, later taken over by Maynard's and is now the Burke Insurance and Real Estate Agency. Now we are to the corner, which is now Hart's Drugstore. My early memory of that corner is that it was an ice cream parlor operated by Anne Marie Williams. I believe Albert Hart moved his drugstore there in the early 1920s. Now let's turn the corner and go north, and we come to the old Wagner Hotel, which now houses the Auto Club. Several different concerns operated in this building over the years. Going on north are 3 houses, still standing, and next George Howell had a blacksmith shop. Crossing the street at this point, we come to the Sail Loft building. My early memory of this building was Fred Platt building beautiful small sailboats there. Down at the river's edge, Cloudy had a small dock for his ferry boat, a small flat-bottom boat with a single-cylinder engine. For a nickel, he would take you across to his boat livery dock at the foot of the West Pier. You could then walk up Linwood Beach or take the elevated catwalk over the swamp. Going on south, there was a small building between the sail loft building and the waterworks, which was both a living quarters and a boat livery for a Murphy family. Later occupied by George Getz, till it was later torn down. Now let us go back uptown. I remember well, the park across from Hart's drugstore, when the old cannon still guarded the harbor. They used to shoot the old cannon on the 4th of July. It was mounted on a wooden base in those days, not the present cement. The park was quite a gathering place then. In summer on Saturday nights, the Vermiioin band gave concerts. There was a rectangular bandstand located in the central part of the park. It was the big night in those days. All the farmers drove into town with their families. The hitching rails, which lined main uptown streets, were crowded with horses and buggies. I remember the farmer families coming into my father's store, bringing butter and crocks and baskets of eggs to barter for supplies, the women shopping for dress material, etc. And the men would fill their little half-gallon stone jugs with whiskey, no doubt to be taken home in case of an emergency. I am sure many emergencies arose because somehow the little jug was always empty the next Saturday night. Now let's go down the hill east on the north side of Liberty Street. The first commercial enterprise we come to is the Fisher Lumber Company, then on east again, to the building, which until recently housed Kishman Fish Company Market and later the Dennis Fish Market. It was originally built by Lou and Jim Dahl and first used as an auto agency for the Overland automobile. Overland had a short life, and then the Dahl brothers sold Ford products. Of course, down the hill and along the river was all the old fish houses, Driscoll, Lighthizer, Parsons, etc. And at the bridge was Showalter's boat livery and Snyder's boat livery. Coming back up Liberty Street on the south side was A.G. McDonald's Quick Lunch, later torn down to make way for Dr. Dickinson's brick building, which is now occupied by Dr. Stack and Dr. Kingsley. Next, we come to the Lakeshore Electric Railway Depot, now Firelands Bank. I remember when they moved the old Maud Elton Hotel down to its present location. It was really some job in those days. With none of the modern equipment, it took some time, but I don't believe they even cracked any plaster in the process. The then new Fisher Block was built, which has since housed many businesses. At first, most of the lower part was a large garage and showroom. Elton Fisher and Albert Waddystone had a Buick auto agency. This was about 1915 or 16. They soon split up, and Stones built a new garage, which is now occupied by the Lorraine Telephone Company. This is the building next to Rudy's Cafe. Leaving the Fisher Block on the corner and going south on the east side of Main Street, we come to the bowling alley and pool room operated by Becker Brothers and later by Earl Ferguson. Now the Photo Journal and Jane Davis Salon are in the location. There is a stairway going up to the second floor at this point, and of interest is the fact that those upstairs rooms were the first meeting place of the Vermiioin Boat Club. Next we come to Jim Nolan's Saloon. This location has always been a saloon during my lifetime. It is presently called the Hungry Fisherman. Next we come to Schwenson's Bakery, which has always been there too. Then we have a little office building, which was John Englebry's Ice and Coal. John delivered ice house to house for our old ice boxes. No electric refrigerators until much later. This office is now occupied by Hull Coal and Builder Supply. All of this is, of course, different today. Now let's cross the railroad tracks going on south. By the way, in my early days, the railroad crossings each had a gate tender who put the gates up and down. Each one had a small shanty complete with a small pot-bellied stove where the tender could stay out of the weather till a train was coming, which was signaled by a bell. These shanties were great hangouts for young men. As we go on south, we see the Old Town Hall on the west side of the main street. It was another entertainment center. Road shows came there, and home talent shows. Now we come to the end of Main Street, and on the south side of South Street was a small grocery store owned by Francis Pelton. Well patronized by all, the kids going to and from school, for he had a good stock of penny candy. This location is now Eagle Market. Later, it was Steve Martin's and then Louis McKay's grocery. Today, we know it as Bicycle Bill's. Going east almost to the river, we come to a brick factory building, which was the Dahl Motor Parts Company. And during World War I, pistons and parts for Liberty airplane motors were made there. This building is now the South Shore Packing Company, now the Bad Boy Bait, Tackle, and Archery Shop. Across the nickel plate tracks was the Wakefield Brass Company, and during World War I, they made large brass ship lanterns for the Navy. I remember in summer, a lot of us young fellows worked there. Some of this may be hazy history, but it is the way I remember it. To those of you who have come this far without being too bored, I thank you.